Hello everyone, Dr. Turner here. Quick video to talk to you a little bit about accessible texts. Because as we know, we have some choices about how we want to teach our particular content areas. And so since we have choices, we might as well make interesting choices that actually make our students curious. So with that in mind, let's be off to the races. So basically, a content area text is any text that you use in your class. If you remember from before, this could be charts, it could be primary source documents, it can be schematics, it can be anything that you learn to read critical. It can even be advertisements, it can be art, but it's anything that has its own genre conventions and own ways of reading, and we read different texts in different areas. The problem with content area text is our main content area text is the textbook. And textbooks, while they're very informative, they are what I like to call filled with gray academic chatter. That means it's like all emotion has been bled right out of them. They have got oftentimes too much information. Oftentimes they are written at a level that is too hard for your students. Well, they're boring. How much do you look forward to dragging home a textbook and reading through it? Not very much. Why? Because they're not always the best tools we have. And as we've learned from James Lowen, some of them are full of errors. In Lies My Teacher Told Me, if you're social studies or history and you have not picked up this book, you should. He compares the top 20 textbooks in history in the United States, and he points out how each of them completely misrepresents the American experience. And so not only can they misrepresent information, they can have old information. If you have a district that's running out of money and they don't have latest science textbooks, we have problems with textbooks. They're dated sometimes, they're boring, and they're usually written at a level your students don't read. So what are your options here? If you really want to teach something, you really want to get students interested in what you're doing. Well, here's an example of an option. You could throw your basic concepts of chemistry at your junior level class, for instance, and I can guarantee you that there will be nervousness all around. Or you might want to introduce the periodic table, say with this book by Sam Keen called The Disappearing Spoon. So look at the difference, and you can pause this video if you want, just to compare the experience you would have learning about the periodic table from this, which is a pretty predictable text in terms of breaking down what's going to happen in the chapter. Notice there's a lot of textual elements and structure here so that you can see how everything's organized. But what if instead of introducing the periodic table with something like this text, you tried something like this text? And this is the first part of Sam Keen's book, and I'm just going to read the first paragraph so you can get the feel of this book. Geography is destiny. When most people think of the periodic table, they remember a chart hanging on the front wall of their high school chemistry class, an asymmetric expanse of columns and rows looming over one's teacher's shoulders. The chart was usually enormous, 6'4" feet, a size both daunting and appropriate, giving its importance to chemistry. It was introduced to the class in early September and still relevant in late May, and it was the one piece of scientific information that, unlike lecture notes or textbooks, you were encouraged to consult during exams. Of course, part of the frustration you might remember about the periodic table could flow from the fact that despite its being freely available to fall back on, a gigantic and fully sanctioned cheat sheet, it remained less than friggin' helpful. What Sam Keen goes on to do is talk about structure before filling in those blanks. He gives you a metaphor like a castle and talks about how each brick has to be there for a reason. And so he talks about the periodic table conceptually before just slogging through each of the elements. So now notice that both of these have their limitations. This one's going to take longer to read. This one's going to give you more information quicker. But if you're introducing a concept, you might want to consider something besides just the straight facts presented as they are here. So you have choices. In fact, for instance, if you wanted to talk about some of the early tensions we had in this country in a social studies or history class, you could bring up the fact that global warming has been around since, well, the debate itself has been around since Thomas Jefferson and Noah Webster argued about it. Way early. It's been around a long time. We get this feeling that what's happening in politics now is something that's never happened. We've never been this divided before. It's because we don't understand our own history, right? So bringing in relevant texts that make history come alive and make our conversations we're having now seem like relevant and part of our cultural baggage are important. If you're teaching math, for instance, you might want to be interested in this book called How to Not Be Wrong, The Power of Mathematical Thinking, which I picked up because I want to know more about thinking like a mathematician. It's not what I do naturally. And so this text is fascinating for me because it not only talks about the kinds of formulas we use, it talks about how we figure things and how numbers misrepresent the facts. And so if I were teaching math, I might consider teaching this chapter called How Much Is That in Dead America, in Dead Americans, which talks about ratios and how ratios are used in the news and what kind of work ratios do and how the news and the rhetorical device, which is how much is that in dead Americans, actually, the logic of that falls apart if you look at it mathematically. So there's ways to make this stuff like real world interesting and important, but we rarely do it. So here's another text you might use in history or English language arts, which is if you want to look at Nazi Germany and you want to look at the enduring and dark legacy of that, you might want to consider a visual text such as Mouse, which is embedded with symbol. You can read it on so many levels. It's terrifying in its new telling of the concentration camps and the collateral damage and the human damage from those camps. But it's going to teach it in a different way than, say, Diary of Anne Frank is going to do it, or heaven forbid, your textbook is going to do it. If you're teaching science or you're teaching health, you want to look at some of there's great writing out there. It's engaging and interesting in all facets of our content areas. And so I'm encouraging you now to prowl through your discipline. Think about things that made you love your discipline in the first place and go there. Introduce those texts. Things that perk your curiosity, that say, I'm remembering right now why I love physics, right? If you are interested in health PE, there's so many visual texts, so many things out there beyond the dull usual things. If you want to teach, you could teach, if you really want to teach collateral damage during World War II, All My Son is a play that is heartrending and it's visual and students can act it out. So there's so many things you can do. You can bring in poems, you can bring in articles, you can bring in, oh my gosh, can hookworms cause hay fever? Cure hay fever, sorry, cause, no, cure, yes. With great, horrible visuals in order to talk about parasites and some of the hypotheses we have about these. So I'm not going to belabor this too much because I want to send you out into the world to look for texts that spark curiosity in your area. And what you're going to do in this assignment is provide a context. You're going to give your name as the teacher. You're going to say what course you might use it for, what grade level. I've got a model of this. Summarize it really briefly and then just say why it's accessible. That's the cover sheet part of this assignment. And then you're going to, in the same document, please paste in your accessible text. And make sure this is only a page or two because I would like you to be able to see as many texts as possible and vote on your favorite one this week. So go out there and look for something that sparks curiosity or debate. We often forget that one of the ways to really get students interested is show how what we argue about, to show things that might be uncomfortable, that cause people to be up in arms. That's the stuff we really read when we get on the internet, right? So with that in mind, I hope you'll go out into the world, find an accessible text, provide a context for it, and post it to the discussion area if you can by Friday, so that everyone can get a look at a text you might use to teach content in your area.